across the globe. And Joe, for nth time on Focus on Liberia, we want to say welcome, and we are glad to have you in this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anthony and Dennis. It's always a pleasure to be here. I enjoy the conversation always when I'm on Focus on Liberia. Very mature, very professional. And I think your audience is moved by that. So it's a very good thing to be here on Focus on Liberia, especially talking about a field that I have so much interest in and passion for. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And in mind, what I always feel is in Liberia, we sometimes worry about the least important. We don't normally get to the root of the issue. We try to put Band-Aid on these things. We are carried away by the election euphoria. We're saying, well, elections, that's one thing, or the candidates and the winning or losing, that's one thing. But at the root of it is the integrity of these elections, how free, how fair, how effective and how efficient they are, so that we can have a better and well-functioning democracy. If we have doubts in the election because of the systems that we're using or because of the personnel, definitely that's a recipe for chaos. But no elections can be foolproof, but at least to some extent, we want to make sure that things that will hamper the free and fairness of the election or a smooth conduct of the elections, changing it from January to December is not going to do much if other things are not, other screws are not tightened. So this is a very, very important discussion tonight. We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. We're going to open the phone lines and your comments because we need all of you to participate in these discussions. So because elections are very important. You see how the Americans, they were very angry, upset that somebody or someone in Russia or somewhere else was tampering with the election, because if the elections are not credible anymore, you cannot boast of any functioning democracy. So I could not be any more happier to have this discussion tonight. Mr. Kunney, that's our senior political analyst, a career law enforcement officer as well, is expected to join in any time so that we can have this election or this discussion. Anthony, back to you as we get things started.
And thank you, Dennis. I just want to add that we will also talk about the referendum. We just also had a referendum, but we don't know what the results are or what they're going to be. There were a lot of circumstances surrounding the conduct of the referendum. We'll also talk about that and see how better things could have been handled, for the results to be in line with the Constitution and also be credible. And Joe is here to help us provide some understanding. Let's get started. Josiah Joekai, you heard him, and I told you he is an election practitioner, but he is also the executive chairman of the Grassroots Alternative Movement. And he's here in his capacity as Josiah Joekai Jr., but we just want to make that clear as well. Joe, again, welcome. We just had elections. Your impression, given what you saw, what is it that ran to your mind after you saw this election ending in pretty much peacefully?
Right. I think we are all grateful for the fact that right now things are going smoothly in terms of the tabulation and counting process. You don't hear much about violence in a major way across the country. So we are all happy, that is happening. But prior to the conduct of the polls, I think many people were very apprehensive about the smooth conduct of the process, given all that went into the elections and the referendum. The referendum is also another form of election. So there were those with the thought that was not a good thing for us to have both referendum and special senatorial election combined to conduct both at the same time on the same date. They thought that it was a convoluted process, given the steps and procedures and the fact that the referendum is an issue-based election. It's not a facial election where you see the face of Dennis or Anthony as a candidate, and then you are able to make an instant decision. It is an election that comes with a test and a symbol that you have to read the text and match that with the symbol and be able to inform about the best proposition to vote for. So giving the understanding level of the average Liberian voter, there were many Liberians who were concerned about holding such referendum, more than one issue, alongside with the special senatorial election. Howbeit, I think on the average, Liberians are happy that it is going this way. The counting process is on. And let me just indicate that the votes have been counted consistent with the Constitution, the aspect that speak on the counting process that gave NEC the right to count for a period of time. It should be for about 15 days. They will be able to release the final result. But sometimes they even release the result before that time. So I will also add my voice to those of many Liberians calling on their compatriots to be patient and to wait on the NEC to do the tabulation and the counting, so that everyone can be satisfied enough.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, but otherwise, I would like to say, yes, it was not all bread and butter, but I mean, on the average, the NEC did well with the limited timing that they had to do all the preparations, and then the resource constraints that they also had to be able to produce the results that they produced. I think we should first commend them before going into the specifics in terms of what went wrong and what was done right. My impression is that, yeah, we should be able to say thanks to the NEC for bringing us this far, because, like I said, you can't just deny the measure of the anxiety and the apprehension that many people had about the elections.
And then, as you unmute, Joe, let me ask you, who can be credited or should be credited for the peaceful nature of these elections that just ended? Who you think should be credited the most?
Firstly, the Liberian voter. The voters should be highly credited because of the conduct at the polls, and I'm very sure there were situations where they were dissatisfied, but that did not culminate into violence of the measure, cause serious harm to the process. And so we need to say thanks to the voters first, because they decided that they should be peaceful. Which speaks to a different mindset, in my opinion, about the Liberian voter in terms of transitioning from what we have experienced over the last 2 decades. So I want to say, yes, we have to thank the Liberian voter for their conduct at the polls. And then before we can even talk about the state security or the elections commission itself, because if the voters don't conduct themselves appropriately, that would definitely be a risk, for the entire process.
And Joe, let me list for you. And Anthony asked a question about who should be credited. We have the everybody has a role. I believe if things went bad, the blame will go on some people. And so when it goes good, we should be also to recognize that. So for all the parties, we have the political parties in these elections. We have the candidates. We have the voters or the Liberian people. We also have NEC, that's NEC, and we have President Weah, and then we have the press. What credit do you give the president? His supporters are saying if things were going to go wrong, you are going to blame the president. How much credit can you give the president?
In the electoral process, the electorate, the elections commission have, and the political parties, they have great responsibilities because they are directly involved in the electoral process. So all of them combined under one umbrella, they are primary stakeholders in elections management. So the political parties, the candidates, the elections commission, the electorate, they are all primary stakeholders in the election process. So I like to give credit to them to say kudos for working together, because none works in isolation of the other. The political parties look up to the Elections Commission to complete their registration and certification process to participate in the election. The Election Commission will have to work with the political parties, the civil society organizations. They are all primary stakeholders in the process to make sure that the civil society organizations are able to assist the commission to disseminate the election information as far as civic education and voter education is concerned. So they have a primary role to play. The electorate have primary role to play. Their role is very significant because without them, you won't have the elections. They have to vote. Their votes have to be counted because they are the one to institute the leadership of their choice. So all of them combined, I put them in a cluster as primary stakeholders to say congratulations to them, to thank them. But you talk about the president specifically, I want to say that yes, the executive, the president is the head of the executive. The executive has a responsibility to provide resources to the Elections Commission as far as their role is concerned, and to ensure the security of the elections through the security apparatus that we have in the country. And so we can say thanks to the government. Because in electioneering, as far as my experience is concerned, we don't talk much about the president as an individual. So we talk about the executive providing the support that it needs to provide in keeping with the laws. So we can say that the executive did well to provide security for the elections. But if the executive provides security for any given election and the primary stakeholders don't work together to ensure that the process is successful, that election will be deemed to be doomed. And so that's why we always place emphasis on the primary stakeholders.
Thank you. And Asuni, the reason I asked that is we also see that these people acting, and we'll come deep into this when we come to the voter tracking about candidates or announcing pre-victories or premature victories. That was the candidates and the political parties. And the actual result of the election were threatened because there was a lot of mistrust in the system. So people were due to political reason trying to say, okay, I have won. So anything contrary means they've cheated me. And those were things that were, kind of sowing chaos into the process. But in all days, we managed to see that those kind of things were very minimal. Election Commission made some errors by marking, the wrong name on some ballots. So I think political leaders or political parties and candidates, they really, even though they were enthusiastic, but probably they would have caused more problem than even what we were expecting the government or the state security, the problem that they were to cause. I think the candidates and their political party and supporters were sometimes way ahead of themselves. What do you think?
Right. You are right about that.
No, I was talking to Mr. CA.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Dennis, and let me pick that up, Joe. You are absolutely right. In Liberia, sadly, our politics is more like militancy, and we see that, and people learn that from school campuses. Far below the belt in high school, you see militancy at play. Political militancy, and then they go to the University of Liberia. And so when they join the political party, it becomes the order of political business in Liberia. And that translates into the issue of political strongmen. If you are not loud enough, if the pitch of your voice is not thundering enough, then you're not serious about being a participant in the political process. So what we see is that you see candidates, partisans, whenever they are talking, they want to sound so extreme so they can be taken serious. We saw that with the collaborating protocol parties, calling for the resignation of the elections officials. I mean, that is just to show they knew it was not possible, that they went ahead and said it anyway. How will you know that, oh, I can say this thing, it will amount to nothing, but I'm going to say it? The reason they did that is to show strength, to play to their people. And sometimes they play to these people, but they don't explain to them what they're doing. They too pick it up, and then the trend continue. So yes, Dennis, the tension can always be very high. And I just hope that Liberians will get to the place where, we'll be responsible as we communicate political issues in our country, especially to their supporters and partisans. It will help to make our democracy better. Joe?
All right. Just joining us is our chief political analyst here at Focus on Liberia, a career law enforcement officer, and also a strong proponent of the decentralization system in Liberia through his organization, LEPAD. Mr. Wilmot Kunney, welcome. Our first question here is your general impression about the election, and how you feel about that. And it was relatively peaceful. Who should we credit most? And the parties we're looking at, we have the political parties, the candidates, the voters, NEC, the press, and the executive headed by President Weah. So your opening statement on that.
Mr. Kunney?
Mr. Kunney.
Mr. Kunney?
Oh.
Mr. Kunney is not hearing us, unfortunately.
Mr. Kunney is not hearing us. Joe, can you hear us?
Yeah, Joe.
I'm hearing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, we're going to put our phone number up very early so that you can participate. We are discussing how can we make our electoral system work better? What are some of the things that we need to play with so that we have a robust, more efficient and effective elections in Liberia? Our guest, Mr. Josiah F. Joekai, he's an election practitioner and he's joining us from Connecticut. Also, we have Mr. Wilmot Kunney, if we can have his technology to work right. He's joining us from Philadelphia. Anthony.
And Dennis, thank you. While we stay hoping that Mr. Kunney will have his technology working here, let me get back to Joe. Joe, and this is not my area, so correct my language if I get it wrong. Something I'm calling the elements of election, and I'm saying this loosely, so and I'm naming them to be the staff, and also the training of the staff, because these are the people that handle the day-to-day activities of the conduct of the election. So talking about how can we make electioneering better, how can we conduct elections better, looking at the staff and training, what do we need to do in order to make improvement that will subsequently translate into efficient conduct of our elections?
Okay, so in elections management, you have two categories of staff. You have the employees of the Elections Commission. Those are the permanent staff members. And you have the temporary staff. Those are people who you hire from time to time to provide services. And the employees will be actually the commission first. Let me tell you about the structure. Right. The commission first has the commission. The law does not provide for anything called board of commissioners. It is actually the commission, and the commission is made of the chairperson, the vice chairperson, and then the commissioners. The next layer is the secretariat that is headed by the executive director. And that secretariat is responsible for the conduct of the day-to-day activities at the commission, supporting the commission, doing research, doing secretarial services, clerical services, and everything. The other group of significant employees are the elections magistrates. These are the people, by law, by the Constitution, conduct the elections in the various counties and then provide the elections results to the commission. That is the commissioners. Their responsibility is to review, certify it, and announce it. So that's how it works. The temporary staff involve people who you recruit, like election monitors, like civic educators, like special trainers. You provide them, you do training of trainers, training for them, and then they go out and then roll out the training to the citizenry. It could be through consultations, town hall kind of conversation or open air fora, and different forms. In different forms, they do the symposia, conferences, So that's the two types of, staff that work for the commission. Now, what is significant is that the temporary staff should be adequately and professionally trained on the significance of a given election, the steps and procedures of that election. Because whatever knowledge or information that they transfer to the public, it is that information that the public will rely on, especially the voters will rely on to participate in the election. So the work of the temporary staff actually educate, inform, and move the voter to be able to vote. That's how significant the role of all of the staff of the commission is significant. Very, very important. That has to be done.
Thank you so very much, Joe. So beside these staff, what are other things that are equally important in the conduct of election? Because these staffs that you talk about that need to be trained and have the right expertise, I believe there are some tools that they must use, in the execution of their duties. So what are those things and how important are they in the conduct of any election?
Absolutely. The first thing that happens is that long before the conduct of the polls in any given election, the Electoral Commission should be able to develop what we call the operational plan for that election.
Right.
The operational plan should include the total number of staff, the categories of staff. It should be able to tell you the kind of election, the significance of the elections, the steps and procedures for voting, all of the information that is required, the total cost of the election and everything. It should be in the operational plan with roles and responsibilities defined far ahead of the plan. Okay, so that must even happen during the pre-election period, because in the election cycle, you have 3 periods. You have the pre-election period, you have the election period, and you have the post-election period. So during the pre-election period, that operational plan should be concluded. It should be shared with the government and the various agencies like the Ministry of Finance, like the legislature. You have the 2 standing committees in both houses. They should be informed, and then the costing should be followed so that government can pursue the mobilization of the resources. And when that is done, the election commission should be preparing for that election by developing regulations and guidelines. And those regulations and guidelines for the election should be consistent with the framework, the legal framework for the election. The legal framework for that election is one of the bases for determining the credibility of the election. That legal framework must include all of the laws, all of the codes of conduct concerning elections in the country. That should be done prior. When that is established, then everyone knows how that election will be conducted. Every information that will be disseminated to the public should be consistent with the regulations and guidelines that are developed from the legal framework. That should happen. Now, if we want to make sure that this is appropriate for our jurisdiction in Liberia, I still see it befitting for us to do a reform of the elections law in our country. There are so many things that need to go into it to nurture elections management in our country so that we can increase the faith of the people in the process, because that is fundamental. when the people don't have faith in the process, it becomes difficult for them to participate because they don't find it important. They don't find it.
Let's go straightly to the elections that were just held in the face of what you just said. All right. So in this, they just completed elections. We saw that. So talk to me based on what you know, if those things that you just enumerated happen, or where is it that we need improvement based on what we just saw?
Okay. So what they did was they developed the operational plan very beautifully. They submitted a proposal to the executive, the technical proposal along with the costs for the election and the referendum. And I think 2 or 3 times they adjusted the budget because of resource constraints. The Elections Commission accepted, even though there were some aspects that were unacceptable, which was wrong on their part. That's why I said that some people were apprehensive from the outset prior to the election, going into it with resource constraints and then not recruiting the temporary staff on time. The temporary staff are now recruited on time, especially like the civic educators to go out and educate the people. It was done lately. The election monitors that they can rely on to give them feedback about the response of the people prior to the election, and then how prepared the public is to go into the election. That has significant. The election monitors they were recruited and deployed lately. Logistical constraints to take the materials in the field. Because of the resource constraint, you did not have the hiring of vehicles on time. You did not have the hiring of the temporary staff to move the logistics and deploy them appropriately on time. So there were lapses in those areas to the extent that some of the staff of the commission had to use the assigned vehicles that they have, to make several trips in different areas just to improvise, to ensure that the election is successful. They had to do that. So those were steps that they messed up on preparing on time and getting the resources on time. And they could not do it magically, because if you don't have the resources, you don't do it. Then this election is like the computer, garbage in, garbage out. That's the kind of situation you have. When you don't have the resources on time, you do not get the things done on time. You do not recruit on time. You do not deploy on time. And you do not provide the services on time, and it catches up with you because our election dates are cast in stone by the Constitution. And when you move them one time from the election date as provided by the Constitution, you have to ensure that you hold them on the date adjusted. So
thank you, Joe. Just hold your thought right there. Let me bring in Mr. Kunney. He's been struggling to connect. Mr. Kunney, let's test the mic.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Okay, you're here. You give a little more volume. I know you're a policeman, so you can talk strong.
Okay, you can hear me. Volume up now.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that's good. That's better.
So, Mr. Kunney, welcome. Your first impression, the elections are over.
Well, the very first impression I want to give here is that we need to pat our country on the back. We've made substantial progress when it comes to the democratic process. I think we need to give thanks to, we need to be very proud of our country. We need to be excited by what is happening in our country in view of the fact that the actual democracy we enjoy today is just 15 years old. The very first free and fair election we held in our country was 2005. So I'm looking at the progress of the country from 2005 to now. And our people are embracing the democratic process in a very marvelous way. There are a lot of challenges we can talk about, but we have to pat ourselves on the back. We got to pat the people on the back. We got to pat the political parties on the back. We got to pat the governor on the back. We got to pat the people that are conducting the elections on the back. And after we do that, then we can go on to discuss some of the challenges that face our people. But for a young democracy like Liberia, for the kind of progress that we have made, I think we need to be proud as Liberians of our country and the direction that we are going. That's my first impression.
Mr. Kunney, enough of this Labrador Day World Trophy, man. The last time I checked, we are independent since 1847, and we've been having elections. How come now in 2020 we're talking about patting everybody on the back because our democracy is young? I don't see how young we are. We're old.
Yeah, but to make that statement is not to appreciate our country, not to appreciate the history of our country, not the country. To make this kind of statement you're making, you know, I mean, Dennis, I know you well informed, but you know the history of Liberia. Indeed, we've been independent for a long time. But I'm saying the kind of democracy we have now, where Liberians are voting for their choice just after 15 years ago, and no one can dispute that. So it is on that basis that I'm saying we need to pat our people on the back. We've been able to conduct elections since 2015. Yes, there have been incidents, isolated incidents of violence here and there, but on the larger scale, all of our elections have been conducted in a peaceful manner, in a fair manner. Other countries around us are conducting elections in which people are being killed. So it is on that basis. Yes, I agree. We owe, there are a lot of things we owe for. But the fact that we didn't do them 100 years ago doesn't mean that if we're doing them now, we can't acknowledge it and give praise to our people.
So who do you pat on the back the most? Is it the political parties, the president, the voters, the NEC, or just the press?
No, we pat the people. You know, we pat the people in terms of the order of. I mean, we extol our people because the democracy we're talking about was not handed over to them by anybody. They fought for it, they died for it, and they are the ones that are making it better each day. And then, of course, we acknowledge the contribution of the government that have been in power, the pool watchers that have sacrificed the time to fulfill this civic duty. We acknowledge their role. But on the whole, we have to give that pat on the back to the Liberian people. In the face of so many challenges, they continue to prefer the democratic process with regard to governance as opposed to finding other alternatives.
All right. So before we get into the nitty gritty, I think the two broad questions let us answer before we get into, and Joekai started on that line, is let's look at the overall election. What did we do so well and what needs improvement? What were some of the challenges overall? Let me start with Joekai on that one. Where we need some help and where we did very poorly, where we did very well, and what needs to change.
Basically, I spoke to some extent about the challenges. I talk about, you know, the timing of the availability of the resources to the Electoral Commission. That is significant because even you do all of the planning, I've been there before, you do all of the planning, you have them written beautifully on paper, and the election has to do with timing. We have timelines for all of the activities, and to ensure that you meet your timelines, you know, effectively, you need to have resources available on time. And this is not just with this election. This is a long-standing issue that we have with the electoral process in our country, making the resources adequate, making sure that they are available on time, so that if the Elections Commission is to conclude the recruitment of civic educators on December 15, by December 15, the list should be up, and December 16, the civic educators are ready to start their activities. But sometimes we have to push 2 weeks, we have to push 3 weeks because resources don't come on time. So one is funding and its availability on time. 2 is providing the kind of education that is needed to the electorate to be able to inform them and to move them to participate in the election. When I say education, there are 2 forms of education that are associated with every election. You have civic education, which is the aspect that gives the significance of the election and the importance of the role of the voter as their responsibility to their country. So you have that aspect that they need to be educated on. The other aspect, which is very significant, is the voter education. The voter education talks about the significance of the given election and the steps and procedures to enable the voter to be able to effectively cast their ballot. All the steps leading to casting the ballot, that is very significant. When you do not have the time sufficient to do that, when you do not have the time sufficient to provide civic education, because right now we don't have a national mechanism in place. Civic education is the broader responsibility of the government. It should be a sustained process that goes on to teach the citizens about their rights, their roles and responsibilities. And amongst those is elections, which is critical, is democracy, which is critical, is governance, how their government work, what is government and how their government works is critical. We don't have that kind of mechanism in place. And I will give you a classic example. In Ghana, for example, you have the National Commission on Civic Education. And it's one of those agencies that's contributing significantly to the strengthening of Ghana's democracy, because citizens are informed about their constitution, about their roles and responsibilities, what they need to do. And that has a greater role in contributing to the measure by which Ghanaians love their country. It's not that the government is coming into every home and cooking plantain and cooking beans for them, but they are aware of what they need to do. They have their own role to play to support the government. As citizens, they know that. They don't see the government as a body that does a favor for them. So in election, one thing we are missing out on is that civic education component, the broader aspect. The narrow aspect, voter education, which is very important for educating the voter and moving the voter, we don't do it sufficiently. We do it occasionally. We do it periodically. So Joekai, when we are ready...
Specifically in this election, you say we didn't do it.
No, we didn't do it much. We did not do it much. Let me tell you, and you will see it from the results that you're going to have. The senatorial election, it was obvious that you are going to see a turnout because the political parties play a major role and those seats were at stake significantly. The Elections Commission did not have the resources and the time enough to do the kind of civic and voter education that they needed to do. And you will see the lapses mainly on the part of the referendum when the results of the referendum starts to come out this week. Because you will find, I'm speaking from experience, we did it in 2011, and I have done it in other countries, in Sierra Leone, in Guinea, in Ghana, and other places. Okay. You will see that the turnout for the referendum will be very, very less. And many of the votes that you receive for the referendum will be invalid votes. And there are sufficient reasons for that, which we can speak, because there was no education, there was mixed messaging. And if you look at the whole referendum setup, it was convoluted and the message did not land well.
Right.
So we didn't do much in that area.
Let me bring in Mr. Kunney. Mr. Kunney, in the just ended election, what did we do so well and where did we struggle?
Yeah, before I go to that point, I think my brother Josiah, I think he made some good points. There are some of the points he made I agree with. Other points I got a slightly different idea. I concede that voter education, civic education, those are very important elements of democracy. I agree to that. The question is, who propagate these ideas in a democracy? I think this is why I get my slight disagreement with my brother and some other people. Many of the people that speak about these things tend to put the responsibility solely on government. And I disagree. These are also the functions of the citizens themselves. Citizens owe it to themselves to be informed about the issues in their own country. Citizens owe that to themselves to be informed about the issues of governance in their country. But more importantly, political parties and interest groups play a bigger role in this education we're talking about. To leave these parties and these interest groups off the hook and try to hold a government solely responsible for these things, I don't think it's a fair assessment of the process. The political parties, they have an interest to make sure that voters are educated, that voters know the issues for which they vote for. I agree with the brother. There may be a lot of invalid votes when it comes to the referendum. And the reason for that would be mostly because political parties abandoned the whole referendum thing. They were only interested in the thing that increased their power. They were only interested in elected officials of their party. So they did not take on this education that is vital to the process, to Liberians that are in their various groups, journalists, all of the churches, the mosques, all of these institutions have a responsibility for both civic and voter education. In some of these countries that we live, some of us, we don't know the issue, but sometimes the organization that you are affiliated with will be the one that will point out to you that, look, in this election, these are the issues that matter. So our people need to take more responsibility for the democracy. What if we have a government that does not believe in these things? Are you saying that we're not going to do these things? So we should put the burden on political parties as well. That's part of the responsibilities of parties, to conscientize the people on what is at stake. So we can't leave civic education and voter education to government alone. We need to teach our partisans. We need to teach our parishioners. We need to teach our fellow citizens that are in other places of worship on what it means to vote, because it is an important civic function. It is an important civic function. I'm not excluding the role of the government. I'm just saying in our discussion, we're always making the government to be the paramount authority. And you know, I dislike this whole powerful government thing. We have to do certain things for ourselves. Today, the electoral process, part of the problem we face with election in Liberia is that the electoral process is so centralized, highly centralized, reflective of our centralized power structure. There are certain things that need to be decentralized. Why will you take people from Monrovia to go do voter registration in Maryland? They cannot verify anybody that lives in Maryland. They cannot verify anybody that lives in Lofa. They don't know these people, but it is all part and parcel of what is wrong with governance in our country. We have power saturated in Monrovia, and the rest of the country will wait until Monrovia sneezes it. So these are the issues we have to address. In as much as I'm very excited that the election is peaceful, it ended peacefully, and I'm very confident that the result will reflect the democratic decisions of the Liberian people. We need to carry this discussion further. We need to look at our system of governance.
Mr. Kunney, sorry to interrupt, but and we'll get to how we can make the system better. We're just laying the premise here. I'm asking you, in these the elections that just ended in the referendum, what did we do so well and where did we struggle? Just quickly, and then we can go to Ansoni to get in.
Oh yeah, I mean, the issue of education, we didn't do it that well. We didn't do it that well. The issue of voter education, civic education, I agree, was not done well. And it was not done well because we defer that responsibility to government alone. So we failed in that respect. We also failed in the respect of our voter roll reflecting the actual voters that are in the various jurisdictions. We're still doing buffing and trucking in our electoral system. We didn't do a good job to handle that. That has been a challenge from the inception of our democracy, and it continues to be a challenge. So this whole idea of trucking on the eve of the election, we had several trucks that left Monrovia and went to certain parts of the country. We've not done well to arrest that situation or to improve on that situation. We have not done well on even voter registration. Voter registration is we do it as some kind of a dramatic event that follows every election. These things should be a matter of routine. A Liberian voter registry should be a matter of routine. It shouldn't be an event that is only held only for election. This should be a routine matter that can be done by any Liberian without any drama. So these are things that we need to improve on. Voter registration, the trucking, voter education, all of these things we need to improve on them. And the only thing we did better is that our people, again, that one is on the people. They were patient. They exercised their right. They did what they had to do. Thank you.
And Mr. Kunney, thank you. I want to ask this question, and I want a very brief answer. You are an advocate.
I just wanted to go back a little bit to the aspect that Mr. Kunney talked about, the civic education and voter education.
All right, go ahead, Joe.
Where we should actually put the responsibility. I'm glad that Mr. Kunney, concurred with me on the civic and voter education component, that not much was done. But let me go further to say that I clearly define what civic education is as far as electioneering is concerned, and what voter education is. Civic education is broader. And the 1986 Constitution, which is our organic law, clearly speaks to what the responsibility of the government is. Article 10. It talks about publishing the Constitution, disseminating it, and teaching its principles in all institutions of learning. It did not limit it to any aspect. The government has to develop a national mechanism for that process. Subsequent governments have not done that. They failed. This government is not yet thinking about instituting a measure whereby the Constitution can be disseminated in the simplest form to the Liberian citizenry for them to know their responsibilities that you talk about, that they are responsible for. I agree with you that they are responsible to know the importance of election, but our people don't know. They haven't been taught that in the past. Their own constitution, they're not even aware of what constitution is on the average. They don't even know what is in that book. They don't even know that that book is their power that they should use to hold their government accountable. So that book also borders on elections. There are provisions in the Constitution that borders on elections. The citizens don't know them. That is why every time the Election Commission is constrained to do civic education, but Election Commission is not supposed to be doing civic education. In Ghana, Election Commission does not do civic education. In places like Guinea, Ivory Coast, where their commission are politically committed, when I say politically committed, you have government agencies that carry out electoral functions in their countries. The commission doesn't do civic education. The only thing the commission does is voter education. And the reason why it is the commission's responsibility, it is because the commission has to design the steps and procedures for voting before it disseminates that. It trains the political parties and trains interest organizations to go all out there, like the churches, like civic education. The Election Commission has to train them first. They don't just do voter education on their own because they do not know the regulations governing a particular election until the Election Commission approves a message and give it to them. So right now, the government has a greater responsibility to ensure that there's national mechanism in place for civic education so that people of the country, the citizens, can understand their own roles, rights, and responsibilities, and they can begin to appreciate elections and take part without even people telling them what the significance is to take part in election. The Elections Commission has to develop for a particular election and roll out the steps and procedures before the churches, before other interests like civic education, before different community groupings can use that information to disseminate. Now, when the Elections Commission delays in providing that kind of information to interest groups like voter education, which they don't develop on their own, when the Elections Commission delays because it doesn't have the funding, it has a negative impact on the action of the voters and the citizenry. That is why we are saying that the Elections Commission that I also worked for before has a greater responsibility to sit with the people. And they too, they always find themselves in the predicament when the resources are inadequate or are not provided at all, and they are constrained to adjust just to make sure that the work goes on. So fundamental to making sure that we have effective elections management in our country is for the government to provide the adequate funding on time. Look, let me tell you, I was one of the 10 persons, Kunney, that was elected from West Africa to go to Ghana in 2012 to investigate whether or not Ghana was ready for elections in 2012, because Ghana was at the brink of damaging their democracy. We were at each other's throat. And when we were there, I was sitting and asked the then Electoral Commission chair, Afarijan. I said, look, UNDP has $2 million that it wants to put into your election. What are you saying about that? Are you going to take it? And Afarijan said, look, I heard my people told me about that. They are willing ever since the beginning of giving $2 million. But we are just about to receive the second tranche from our government. Our election is 100% supported by our government. We don't have anywhere to put that $2 million from UNDP.
Sure.
Now, that's the kind of situation we're talking about here, Kunney. So I just wanted to provide that clarity while we proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And Mr. Kunney, the question I wanted to ask you, you are an advocate for decentralization. What I've seen, and you may agree with me, is the conduct of the elections more than rests on the shoulder of the National Election Commission that sits in Monrovia for the most part. And Joe, you may correct me whether or not there are offices of the National Election Commission in other counties that can help to carry on the functions of the NEC. What we see in other countries like the U.S. is that state governments, county government, and even city government play a role in the conduct of the election. So, Mr. Kunney, you as an advocate for decentralization, how can we decentralize the conduct of the election so that we get the involvement of local government to, kind of ease the burden on the NEC for us to have an effective conduct of elections?
I thought you make a very good observation. But Josiah, I largely agree with everything you said regarding voter education and civic education. My only slight disagreement was that instead of putting other parties on the line, we try to make it lean heavily government, because there may be a situation where you have a particular government that are not even interested in those things. And there should be an avenue for the people to be conscientized on these things. That's just the point I was making. Regarding, look, the whole question of decentralization in Liberia has to be taken comprehensively. And it would be difficult to talk about decentralizing one agency while the entire government remains centralized. But on a purely operational level, imagine a situation where the election commission will have electoral offices in the various counties, where that the election commission will have strong supervision over, that will conduct these elections, that will carry on voter registration, that will carry on the civic education my brother is talking about, that will carry on all of these functions. Imagine how actively our people will participate in the process. But here we got this mammoth election commission that sits in Monrovia and sends directives to the rest of the country, just like the rest of the government. So we have to look at it very seriously. Very seriously. I still cannot believe that the people of Lofa, the people of Lima, the people of Sino, the people of all our counties, that you cannot put a mechanism together where they can supervise their own elections in their own locality and produce effective results. That we have to wait for somebody from Monrovia to go to Maryland to go do voter registration to do these things. So it's all part and parcel of this highly centralized governmental structure we have in Monrovia. And I think it's about time that Liberians focus on the kind of governance structure we have. I'm not pushing federalism or anything like that. I'm talking about the decentralization of some powers and responsibilities that we will send to the counties, that will make the people to take some interest in their own self-government and make the provision of government services and government activity much more efficient and relative to the local condition. You guys look at some of the problems from this election. You find people in some of the countries, they say foreigners have invaded their country. So they cannot let the electoral process go forward because foreigners are there. These are all the issues. I think these issues can best be addressed at the local level. The local people know their own people, and they are best positioned. They are best positioned to identify their people, to put into place the thing that work for the, that will create a conducive environment for the people to make the kind of democratic decisions that they are making. It is half past time for Liberia to put a big shot in this centralized government structure. It has deprived our people so many opportunities. Those of us that have the benefit of travel, you go to other countries. They are making progress because governmental power is not in one place. For too long, we have allowed governmental power to be in one place. There is no other point in our country that is relevant other than Monrovia. And this is why development is so stagnant. This is why improvement in other aspects of our country is so stagnant. This is why the only thing you find close to a city in Liberia is Monrovia. Besides Monrovia, when they show you any other city in Liberia, you will be depressed as a Liberian. Because nothing goes on in the region that don't come from Monrovia. And we have to pay emphasis to it. We have to pay attention to it. It has to be the next sphere of advocacy for our country.
Thank you, Mr. Kunney. And Dennis, you want to come in? I want to ask Josiah a question.
I need to come in on that.
And Joe, let me throw this in there, and then you can roll on it because it's connected to what we're discussing here. And it's about.
I think that question can come, Anthony. Anthony, I think that question can come, but Kunney, stress a very important point on decentralization that I don't want to be. I
guarantee you, it's connected to it, Joe. I guarantee you, it's connected to it. Excellent. It's about invalid votes, Joe, and for people to capture this, let me read a few numbers to you. The provisional results that were released by NEC on the 12th poll Monserrado County at 9,177 invalid votes, Bassa at 3,000, Nimba at 5,000, Lofa 3,000, Wapolu 1,000, Maryland 2,000, and the list goes on and on. So the question there is, this number of invalid votes that we are having, how do we have to minimize this?
2012, I was in Sierra Leone as the head of the Mano River Union Observation Mission to observe Sierra Leone election. When the results were coming in, after the APC, after the SLPP, it was not any other political party, but it was invalid votes. So after those two parties, the invalid vote was higher than all the other parties that were coming after. And the reason for that was simple, that not much was done effectively on voter education. I'm not talking about civic education, because voter education also includes the marking of the ballot, how to mark the ballot. So take, for example, Kunney is on the ballot, Dennis is on the ballot, Anthony is on the ballot, and I, Josiah, I go to mark the ballot for Kunney, and I mark the ballot beautifully for Kunney. And then because I don't like Dennis, then I write something, a bad language for Dennis in the box adjacent his name. That's an invalid ballot, in as much as I voted regularly for Kunney. And that's part of the voter education, to educate the voter on how to mark the ballot. It's one of the critical components. Two, there are some of our older folks that go into the voting booth to mark the ballot and they don't want any assistance from other people. They really need assistance, but they just say no, they don't need assistance. And they go in there to mark the ballot and just run the ink with their thumb from Dennis' box, and run it down straight to Kunney box. So until we can have an effective, a sustained way of educating voters on how to mark the ballot, we're still going to be experiencing a significant number of invalid votes. And you won't believe that many of the invalid votes are unmarked ballots. They just take the ballot, they go to the voting booth, they don't do anything with it, they bring it back and drop it in the ballot box. Unmarked. If you talk to people from the Elections Commission, they will tell you that invalid votes are unmarked ballots. And the coming referendum, you will see several of them unmarked. They will just take it and leave it like that. Especially they were distracted by the senatorial election. They will just mark the senatorial ballots and then take the referendum ballot and drop it in the box. Mark. Now, you had two by-elections also. One in District 2 in Sano and one in Monserrato in District 9. That's a convoluted process for them. You have the representative ballot to mark, you have the senatorial ballot to mark, you have the referendum ballot to mark. Trust me, not all people just mark the senatorial ballot and the representative ballot and drop the referendum ballot without marking it. Because in the first place, no faces on it. It's an issue-based election. You only have symbol and you have text. So they just drop it. So that's what more has to be done on voter education. But let me bring you to the point that Kunney was making. And I'm one advocate for decentralization. Decentralization that has to do with the devolution of power, where the people in the counties will also have the authority to use their resources, to generate, to use their natural resources, to generate resources, to manage their resources, and to work in consultation with national government. Yes, I do agree on that. However, Liberia is a unitary state. Liberia has counties. The National Elections Commission is one of the very few agencies that is well decentralized. As I speak to you, I want you to write down the numbers. The Elections Commission has 19 functional magisterial offices, 19. You have 2 in all of the large counties. You have 2 in Nimba, upper and lower. You have 2 in Lofa, upper and lower. You have 2 in Bong. All of the larger counties, you have 2. The smaller counties like Bome, you have 1. Those magisterial offices have functioning offices, digital system. They have internet. They have 24 hours. They have warehouses for storages. They have the election magistrate that operates by law. They are appointed by law. They are captured by the Constitution. How decentralized they are. Then you have the assistant magistrate. You have the warehouse manager. You have the civic education officer there. They are responsible. And when there is time for registration, you don't have a team that leave from Monrovia to go to do registration. They are all educated and they all roll out the registration in the county. But Kunney is right on this gone registration update. And I was one of those that spoke against it. You don't do an update on the voter registration list that is already questionable. You don't do that. Because for the update, they had to take a team from Monserrato to go from county to do it when they had the magisterial offices that they needed to provide the training to do. We did voter roll update before. What if Kunney has 5 voter registration cards? Kunney can go to Bassa when the team is going there. Kunney goes there and register. When the team is going to River G, Kunney can go to River G and register. Use the River G card. When the team is going to Maigibi, Kunney can go to Maigibi and register. Kunney will be registered in Maigibi. He will be registered in River G. He will be registered, in Grand Bassa. That's the issue with the update. But we last did voter registration in 2011, following the census in 2008. My frustration has been the legislature after the census took a decision by resolution for the election commission not to use the census to set a threshold by which we can have constituencies. That is why today we are still having electoral districts from 2011, and we have not done any fresh voter registration. Today, you have so many Liberians that are in possession of multiple voter registration cards, which is wrong. That voter registration list that you have, if you ask me, I will tell you that it is not credible from conducting. I said it here before on the show here. It is not credible for conducting any elections. We just managed to get through this. And I'm told that ECOWAS was involved somehow. They came and did some cleaning. But I gave you the history about cleaning the road that we have not done well, because everything is backed by law. When we clean the road, in 2011, we gave the list to the Ministry of Justice by law, 10,000 plus duplicate names was on the roll. Those have not been cleared. I'm not sure. When we did that, the name of dead people on that list by law, we have not removed them. The Elections Commission is supposed to work with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Justice to be able to advise on how to remove the names of dead people from the list. So I agree with Kunney on the overall distribution decentralization thought. But when it comes to elections, the Election Commission is one of those that is decentralized in the country. Do the research, is decentralized. Their officers are equipped. They have the logistics and think to do the work. The only problem is sometimes in between the commission takes a decision that is not favorable, such as the voter roll update that they did. What they did was not a voter registration, was not a new voter registration. They just come to your place and they want to know whether you are living in Buchanan before, but you have moved to compound number 1. And then because you have moved, they go on the list and change your address that you are no longer in Buchanan, you are now in compound number 1. That's the kind of thing they did with the gone voter roll update. It was not a registration. And they made it like a mobile registration process. But time for a real voter registration, the team does not leave Monrovia. In fact, the team in Monrovia is only administrative. It stays at the headquarters. The magistrates, by law, are the ones that conduct elections, not the commissioners, not the team from Monrovia. And that is why the complete mechanism for elections in Liberia, when any candidate or political party is not happy about the way elections were conducted at a particular poll, they first complain to the magisterial office. The magisterial office is responsible to investigate. If that person is not satisfied, the political party is not satisfied, they take an appeal to the board of commissioners. When the board of commissioners intervene, they are not satisfied, they take an appeal to the Supreme Court. So actually, there is a decentralized mechanism for elections management in Liberia.
Thank you, Joe. If you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. If you want to participate, you want to make this more participatory, please call the number on the screen. And right now we have our first caller, Mr. Civic Goya. You are live. What's your contribution?
Hey, I appreciate you for having me on, Mr. John, Mr. Sonny. Hi, Mr. President, and then my own brother, Joekai. I'm really following the conversation. My call is about a frustration. I think quite too often why our brothers and sisters in Liberia get frustrated with us in the diaspora is that quite too often we have prescriptions for things that are happening in Liberia, but we ourselves tend to most times sit on the sidelines and not even take those prescriptions. What am I speaking to? EULA had delegates, had election observers that were certified election observers to the 2017 elections in Liberia. EULA observers came back and had the same complaint about voter education and the lack of our people being properly educated on how to exercise their constitutional responsibilities and rights. Yet, the same EULA, building on that, decided to spearhead a Proposition 1 change to the Constitution without doing adequate voter education. We knew that from 2017 when we as EULA had delegates, had people observing voter education in elections in Liberia. Yet we did not carry that out. We saw that EULA decided to EULA and its partners went ahead and outsourced this whole issue of voter education with respect to Proposition 1. It just left it in the hands of the diaspora Liberians. If you call Lofa County, most especially when we decided the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks to have voter education regarding Proposition 1, we were only focused on Monrovia and Kakata and places like that. Call somebody in Lofa, call somebody all the way out in Grand Juda. There was nothing done to interact with those people. Look, my last conversation, my last comment, and I leave the line is, you look at where this manifests itself. If you look at Montserrat County, for example, the total invalid votes. If you sum up if you take out Darius Dillon and you take out Thomas Farah, the remaining 8 participants, if you sum up their total vote accumulated is less than the total invalid votes. So we have more mistakes than 8 candidates' votes total combined. This has to be something that we, diaspora Liberians, when we sit and we proffer these prescriptions, we have to also make sure that we are on the ground and we are actually taking our own prescriptions instead of just sitting in the diaspora and hearing our prescriptions that we can't take. I'll take my comments off the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goya. Mr. Kunney, you want to take that first before we, because he's stressed on EULA.
Yeah,
and
he's a former EULA, he's still a EULA man, so let him take that.
Yeah, and Joe will take
They shot fire at Kunney. They shot fire at Kunney.
Shot fire at EULA.
Well, normally I don't like to be the spokesperson for EULA because everybody know I've left EULA about 5 years ago. But once at EULA, you're always a EULA person. I listen clearly to my own brother Zizi. Look, the problem that we face as Liberians, no one person has the magic bullet to it. The brother is talking about the role that EULA play in voter education.
Mr. Kunney, before you continue, I'm familiar with EULA. EULA is not one person. EULA is an organization since the 1971, and there's a whole big group.
So, I hear my brother, and I know Mr. Dennis, a guy who biases when it comes to EULA, but what I want to say is that the issues are far greater, and the issues are more challenging than just mere criticism. We're talking about capacity here. We're talking about ability here. And EULA as an organization, I think is very big enough to absorb all of the criticism. But sometimes when people criticize, they will also come with what contribution they themselves made to that process. Yes, we are in the diaspora, but we all have obligations and commitments. Notwithstanding, there are people among us that have made the greatest sacrifices to this cause than others. And he's talking about people that I know, I've heard many times where the chairman on dual citizenship was on the various radio stations, not in Monrovia, but across the country. Whether that's Nima, whether that's MindGB, whether that's Taino, whether that's Lofa, he was all over the place. But like my brother said here, to conduct effective elections, you also need money. To do campaigning in Liberia requires money. The question is, what has been the contribution of the diaspora to issues that affect themselves? We always, like I said, most Liberians got a manna mentality. We got this manna mentality where we think that the manna flow from heaven, God should send it, and the rest of us should benefit. But when it comes to putting our own effort into things that we really want, we are lacking. How many Liberians supported the dual citizenship thing in the diaspora with their might, with their resources? You talk about immigration. How many Liberians actually led the demonstration, the contact, leaving their job to lobby government, to lobby the U.S. powers for immigration? Very few. Only very few people will do that work. Notwithstanding the bomb, we still criticize. So this is part of the same effort. It is true. You have looked at the issue of voter education before, and we also are aware that there was a lack of voter education in this election, but that is not a making of EULA alone. That is not a making of EULA did what they had to do. EULA did what they had to do. As I speak to you, there is a delegation of EULA that been on the ground in Monrovia since the beginning of December. Do anybody care how they being fed? Nobody cares. But everybody wants this massive propaganda campaign on behalf of EULA. The question is, what is your contribution to that effort? So sometimes before we criticize, we need to assess ourselves.
Thank you, Mr.
And we need to appreciate it. And we need to appreciate the effort that other people make on our behalf.
Mr. Kunney, thank you. We saw the chairman of dual citizenship in Monrovia eating in the restaurant, so we are very sure that he's been.
We We are very sure Big Brother Wetty, all his posts will carry about 20 pictures, how he eating a chicken in a classy restaurant when the people in Negro Town are on the beach looking for a cup of rice. Anyway, that's a joke. Hey, this is what I pick up, right?
Let me just add to that. Kunney was making a point that I'd like to add to on the whole voter education thing. And I want to be specific. Let me narrow down to this on December 8th senatorial election and referendum. Prior to conducting the polls on December 8th, there are several organizations and individuals who call on the Elections Commission not to combine the two major events, the two major electoral events, that the referendum was going to be considered a side issue. My organization, the Grassroots Alternative Movement, made a major call. We even appeared on this platform, the entire leadership, and discussed our call. We wrote the legislature, the two houses, and copied all of the lawmakers, all of them, calling on the legislature to draft a resolution to postpone the referendum so that the Elections Commission can shift 100% focus on the senatorial election because of its importance. And I've always said that the election will serve as a litmus test to the 2023 elections in terms of evaluating the effectiveness, the efficiency of the commission, and also the voters themselves, how they will respond. That will set the stage, for what we'll do in 2011 and how the candidates will also conduct themselves. But look, the Supreme Court ruled, a few days to the elections on the CPP case, the injunction they filed, for the Elections Commission not to proceed with the referendum. Firstly, I want to say that if you look at the official gazette, the government even contradicted itself. And there was a violation of the resolution passed by the legislature. The legislature passed on 8 provisions. And those 8 provisions were condensed into 3 propositions. That alone is a violation of Article 92 of the Constitution. Because Article 92 on referendum provides that the Elections Commission, if the proposition is more than 1, the Elections Commission should submit all of the propositions separately. You are not supposed to condense any. You should submit it to the Liberian people to vote on them. You are not to condense any. Each position should stand alone. That was a violation and part of the mixed messaging, because all along the Elections Commission and interest groups and political parties were campaigning for 3 propositions that were supposed to be submitted to the Liberian people to vote on. 5 days to the elections, based on the Supreme Court ruling advising the commission not to proceed because they violated Article 92, they did not allow each proposition to stand alone. Instead, they were condensed. The Elections Commission went ahead still to proceed with the referendum by introducing the other 5 articles propositions. So that's mixed messaging right there. From 3 to 8, that's mixed messaging. You don't know what you're going to see at the polls. You're going to receive ballot papers that you're not prepared for. So there were so many things that went into this election, including under that voter education component, Mr. Kunney, that contributed to the way the people voted, particularly on the referendum. I know that we have not seen the referendum results, but given what went into the process and given our experience of 2011, we can suspect that there will be a lot of invalid votes. Again, this is about how we generate the invalid votes. There are so many things that went in it to confuse the voters as well, not just limited civic education or voter education provided.
Yeah, and Mr. Joekai, I want to talk about the invalid vote, but to Mr. Goya's point, because I see that there is this, even before our first show, there was this message about, people in the diaspora, and sometimes I sit, because I see that word quite a lot. They sit in the diaspora. I don't know what they expect us to do, stand up. But again, people in the diaspora have been criticized, like Mr. Goya is saying that we've not done enough on the ground. And I would disagree. It was just a few days, even Darius DeLong, who won so massively in Monrovia, I would say that 65% of his support come from here. I see diaspora Liberians online collecting money. I think the problem has been for where I sit is we've been prioritizing the wrong things. We have not really dealing with some structural issues and issues that will deal with the problem from the root. I think that has been the problem, because if the effort we put in just canvassing for Tifa or DeLong, if we put that same level of energy into, say, the referendum, we'll have better result, or educating people, or civic education, or giving some money. There was this guy, George Lobo left and went there. He said he was doing civic education. Agree with him or not, he made an effort and he was educating people, right? So if we put money in those kind of efforts, we have conducted programs here on focus on Liberia, gearing toward civic education, the referendum, and all the things. But how many people in the diaspora watch it? These are not things that interest them. What interests them is who's going to be senator or vice president tomorrow. But my thing is on the invalid votes.
To a point. Can I make a quick point?
But
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Kunney.
I just want to buttress what Dene is saying. Is, we in the diaspora, what do we support? What are the issues that are paramount to us? The issue of dual citizenship has been one of the major advocacy issues for diaspora Liberia. Started way back 2000. It actually took form in 2012. But before that, there were others before us. The late superintendent, the late Senator Monster, former Vice President Benny Warner, Cletus Waterston, all of these prominent Liberians, they started this process. Eula formalized the process in 2012. Eula did everything that it could to mobilize the diaspora in this direction, whether it is appealing to county leaders to incorporate their legislative caucuses, whether it is sending delegations to Liberia countless number of times, 2009 to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 2013, 2014, every time addressing the joint session of the National Legislature. These are all things that Eula and his partner have been doing. And I can tell you, again, the manner concept I brought, whenever we convene a meeting for these things, the average attendance to these meetings are about 100% to 200%. These are the people that are continuously making their donation, their widow's mite of $100, $150, $50, and that is the resources that Eula and his partner been standing on to do whatever they're doing. It may not be perfect, the effort may fall short, but it will not be for a lack of trying.
You're not making new point. You made this point before.
Mr. Kunney, on the issue of
Mr.
citizen, may I come in, Dennis?
Mr. Kunney interrupted so he could make the point. So let me finish on the question of the invalid votes. Again, one issue we find in Liberia is anytime we do anything, it could be voter registration. We crunch the numbers. They say numbers don't lie. But what I think we fail to do is to use the result from every process has a way of teaching and also streamlining the process or making the process better. We see that even in our national exam, when the national exam takes place, people just say how many people pass, how many male, how many female. They don't go down to actually study the result and see where the curriculum can shift and where they can make improvement. On the invalid votes, I don't know, Mr. Joekai, you can speak to that. Did we ever take the invalid vote, go through there and see what the mistakes are, and use that as part of the voter education in the following election? I don't think we ever did that. We always talk about, 50% voter in Lofa, 25 were boys, 16 were girls, and the rest of it, and then that's it. So if we don't look at what the results from the election and use that and prepare training material based on that, we're going to be going through the same cycle of invalid vote beating other candidates.
Let me be frank with you. The invalid votes come from places. They come from towns. They come from districts. They come from places that are mapped when the results, are concluded. And the data center has the stats per center, per towns, per district. They have all of the results. And when I was director of civic and voter education, One of the things I did as a result of a high invalid vote, low turnout, was to request the UNDP to finance a project to do an analysis of the voting behavior of the voters in Liberia, their understanding of the electoral process. That was an extensive study that was done. And Sonny has a copy of that study. I forwarded it to him, and I can also share with you people. When that result came up, the first recommendation that came up because of the low level of civic and voter education in the country was that the government should institute a National Civic Education Commission. That's how serious it was. I agree with you on that. We have a serious problem with invalid votes every time we have election because the voter education component is not profound to the extent that you are able to teach the people to vote and to go and do the right thing in the vote. So we did that study, and that was the first recommendation. It is in that study report, in that survey report. You will see the recommendation that the government should institute that we just have people working with interest groups across the country, right, educating people on those things to make sure that they understand the voting process, make sure that they understand the electoral process. We took that recommendation and presented it to the government before this one. That is why I was sharing, when I was responding to Kunney's response, saying that the successive governments, not just this government, that has not been responsive to this issue. We took that study report and presented it to the government for the government to take action. We had discussion with the different structures in the legislature in both houses on the need to take this seriously and enact it, make it a statute, so that it becomes a responsibility of the government, not just a selective kind of a thing that you approach, but nothing has been done, Dennis. That's what I'm saying. Everything boils down to...
And Joekai, to Kunney's point, I don't think the political parties too and the candidates realize the extent to which invalid vote is taken, or the lack of voter registration, example being the incidences of invalid vote, is taking votes away from them. I don't think they have made that connection, because if they did, they themselves will put effort in voter registration. How do we mark? Give us a sample ballot. Let's go around and show people how to mark, and show our supporters how to mark these ballots. So candidates, political parties are not doing much because perhaps they don't know to what extent it's affecting them.
The one aspect that we waste resources on, we really waste resources on the mock ballots. We'll call it the mock ballots. Every election, this one election, if you check the Elections Commission, there were thousands of mock ballots produced, thousands of them. They produce it, they give it to the candidates that have been, certificated to participate in the election. They gave them their own mock ballots to take to their people to teach them how to mark the ballot ahead of time. But this going election, the time the ballots arrive in the country, you did not even have that time to do it because of the timing. And again, Kunney will agree with me that the issue, it boils down to funding and the timing of the availability of the funding. It's not just this election. When I was at the commission, we had that situation with the commission. But let me tell you how other countries are dealing with this. And Liberia can use that. In Sierra Leone, for example, they took away the political party management responsibility from the election commission. You have a special commission called the Political Party Registration Commission in Sierra Leone. Elections Commission has to do nothing with political parties. The only thing Election Commission receives from the Political Party Registration Committee is the list of certified candidates to participate in the election. So Election Commission doesn't have that responsibility. So that the Political Party Registration Commission deals with the political parties, does everything with the political parties. The Election Commission focuses on its regulation, on guidelines, and everything it has set up, for the election. Then in Ghana, Election Commission has nothing to do with civic education. The only thing it does is produce the ballot, teach the people how to mark the ballot, period. And some of the countries, what they did was no option. You're not using pen or your thumb. Some countries, it's only your thumb. So you don't even have pen to go start writing, insulting people on the ballot, marking your candidate correctly and insulting other people, invalidating the ballot. No opportunity for that. So you put your thumb in that box, the market period is finished. You're not using pen. Some countries got these different approaches the way they are dealing with it from my own experience of what they do. In our country, the political party management take a greater part of the Elections Commission work. And that should not be the case. That should not be the case. Civic education takes a greater responsibility of their work. That should not be the case. It should be a different ball game altogether. The Elections Commission should focus on the significance of the election, setting up the voting procedure, and getting all the interest groups to assist the commission to disseminate the information at all levels. Like Kunney said from the beginning, you know, the community is a responsibility. The church is a responsibility. Once the commission is able to provide them the accurate information to disseminate to their people, you will have more people participating, less invalid votes, and you will have high turnouts.
And Joe, let me ask the question is in line with what you're explaining. I'm glad you said that there is something you said, more ballot has been given to the candidates that they can use to educate their voters and supporters. In your view, knowing what you know, is that time frame, whether it's set up by law or is enough based on your experience? Because I'm asking this question because this going election, there was not time enough. So you emphasize the timing. So I'm asking, do you think the time provided by law when the more ballots should be given to the candidates, is that time enough for them to reach out to their supporters to help minimize this invalid votes?
The more ballot process is called Know Your Candidate. It's called Know Your Candidate. That's the caption. Know Your Candidate. It is not by law. It is part of the voter education mechanism set up by the commission.
Right.
So if you are participating in an election in district number 2, just how the ballot will look for electorate to vote in the voting center, they are going to give you a ballot that is not the official ballot. It is the mock ballot that will give you.
I get that. The time is given to the candidate and the time to election. Is that time enough, in your opinion?
You know, many Liberians don't know about this. That's why I'm taking my time to explain it before I can answer that. Is that mock ballot that is given to you just how the official ballot will appear that you are going to use, you're giving to mark, that's how the mock ballot will appear. And then you will go ahead and teach the voters in your area on how to mark the ballot. But many of the candidates, whether or not they have sufficient time, they don't have time with a mock ballot issue. Some of them actually have time to do it. The Elections Commission also give it at times with a limited time to the polls, to the holding of the election. And sometimes you don't have sufficient time to use these mock ballots to take them around to the people in the community. So that's the situation. But if they always have the luxury of time, if they have sufficient time to be able to use the mock ballot, if the next produces the mock ballot on time and they take it to their people, that's the best thing to do. It also helps the commission to reduce the number of invalid votes.
Thank you.
I'll send a quick question.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask Josiah a quick question.
Where are you, Mr. Kunney?
Where are you? We can't see you and you're asking questions.
Man, quick question, Josiah, before I'll go somewhere, but quickly. You know, here my observation is that election, even for some other Americans here, is a challenge.
Yes.
Americans that may have some challenges, mental challenges, retardation, other things like that. And I'm not saying that our people are mentally retarded or they got all these things, but we face our own specific challenges when it comes to literacy. What we find in America here, you find the relatives or the caregivers or people close to these people accompanying them to the voting booth or helping them to make their choice. So how much is this invalid vote that is attributed to some of the rigid rules we have regarding election, where sometimes we don't even allow the grandmother to bring her granddaughter to mark the ballot, to go in the booth together? Some of these little rigid rules we have around election, how much of that contribute to invalid votes?
Firstly, that's a very good question, and thanks for bringing that up. Firstly, all elections that are conducted in Liberia, the steps and procedure contains a component that has to do with assistance. So for handicaps or for people who are the elderly. They have people who assist them. But this is what happens when they bring them to the polls. You have to be somebody who have voted already. You have already voted, or verify that you have voted already, and then you take the person into the vote. Your assistance should stop where you put the ballot, where they put the ballot before them to do in the process, in the voting process. Then they make their decision to vote. Or sometimes you go through with them. You say, "This is Kunney, this is Dennis, this is that." That's why it has to be a trusted person. That's why the presiding officer in the booth, where I see the relationship to the person, you will face that, you'll be given a set of questions. They do that in the electoral system in Liberia. There is assistance for those kind of people. In fact, we don't even allow them to stay in the queue. They don't allow them to stay in the queue. Once those kind of people come, they give them priority. They prioritize them. They go straight into the voting center, and that assistance is provided. But there are some of them, like I said from the beginning, they are stubborn. Some of them, when they come, they ask them whether they were accompanied by people to assist them. They say no. In fact, let me put it in Liberian parlance. That you're supposed to choose the person you're supposed to vote for. That you're supposed to tell me who's supposed to vote for. Somebody's supposed to tell me who I'm supposed to vote for, and they are old. You see that they will have issues, or sometimes they have other handicap situation, and you feel that they really need assistance. But sometimes they are very adamant, and they say that they don't want anybody to accompany them. They want to go to mark their own ballot. Some of the people even go. Some of them, they are handshaking. And they even go to vote and run the ink. They are thumb across, the line. They do a lot. Sometimes they write across the line,
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me bring in two more callers to participate. First is Josiah. Jackie, you're live.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is very fascinating. I have two friends from Syracuse, so we're all listening, and we're very, very interested in this. My question is for Mr. Josiah. I'm really surprised about the mock ballots. I didn't know about the mock ballots. So my question is, it would seem that the longer the ballots are in Liberia, the more the people can get used to the ballots. But is it possible that besides the candidates, that civic societies and other peoples like schools and things, can they get mock ballots so they can show it to the people? I mean, who gets these mock ballots, and how do they get it? Like, for example, could an organization request one if they were doing civic education? I'm really interested in the mock ballots, because I know that sometimes there are some people who don't understand the logistics of voting. But so my question would be, who gets the mock ballots, the timing of getting the mock ballots, and can any organization request them? I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, hold that thought. Let me bring in one more caller before you come in. Our next caller is Jane. Jane, is that the name, or your name and where you calling from?
Hello.
Hello. Go ahead.
Hello, how are you?
Good. Your name and where you calling from?
Okay, my name is Ernest Jones. I'm calling from Washington, Maryland.
You said your name is Josh?
No, Ernest.
Oh, Ernest. Ernest, you're alive. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question is pertaining to what I'm watching right now in terms of what happened with regards to the, I don't know whether I'm late or not, but I don't know whether it is still that part of the talk. I think our issue in Liberia is we do not respect our laws. I may give you one quick example. I'm talking in terms of the resolution that the Supreme Court took back to the Election Commission. And what happened was, after this stuff was taken back to the Election Commission, I think the administration should have respected the word of the court, okay, and table the entire resolution instead of putting them into 3 parts from 8 to 3. And so as a result, they force themselves to make themselves shame. And this is one of the reasons why people, I guess, voted against it. And until we can get to the phase that we start respecting the Supreme Court when it speaks, on issues pertaining to the country. It's going to be difficult for any administration. The Supreme Court spoke. They said something was wrong. Right. What they should have done again was to table the entire stuff. And I mean, it took another chance or year, to explain to the country, to the people, the purpose of the resolution. But instead of that, they didn't do it. And so that's when Daryl went against it.
Hello?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ernest. Let's bring in the other caller here. Caller, your name and where you calling from. 216 area code.
This is Martin Zenway calling from Cleveland, Ohio.
Martin, you're live. Go ahead.
All right. My question here is, I want to address the panelists, Mr. Kunney, and Mr. Joekai, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Joekai.
The question here is, I don't think a lot of Liberians in the diaspora were against. Mr. Kunney was saying that we didn't support the referendum, on dual citizenship. All right. So, we haven't gotten all the final result yet, but my question here is, now, what is EULA going to do, depending on what happened? What is EULA going to do to get, because I feel like a lot of people that is support in the diaspora because of some of the stipulations that were put on the referendum. All right. So now moving forward, what is EULA waiting to do to organize, because we need to organize ourselves here as a unit, to discuss some of these stipulations and see how we can agree and then present it to the government in Liberia so we can fight as a unit. Because the first thing is we're fighting among ourselves here because we can't agree. And then we're going back there and fighting against the people and ourselves. So we need to first organize ourselves here. All the people that are against and for, come together and see how we can discuss the issues, come to a conclusion, and then present it to the government in Liberia and see how we can work together to help, break some of this stipulation away. Because I think the stipulation, all Liberian in the diaspora were some of the major roadblock for people already supporting this referendum, especially on dual citizenship. So that's my question, Mr. Kunney.
Thank you.
And Mr. Joshua, what are you guys willing to do now, to unite the Liberians here so we can come to a conclusion, discuss these stipulations, and see how we can work with the government to agree on some of these roadblocks that they put in place for Liberian in the diaspora? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question. Mr. Joekai, let's start with you on the mock ballot. The question
Yeah, the mock ballot issue, that's a good question. Excellent question from Jackie. Look, the mock ballot is for everybody, all the interest groups, the political parties, the candidates, is for everybody. That's the intent. When I was director of civic education, I introduced something at the commission. What I introduced was to build a database of all civic educators that the commission is using today. I built a database of the election monitors so that every election we don't recruit new people. We only recruit new person in a particular place where we don't have that civic educator anymore. But that database exists. I built a database of interest groups, civil society organizations, hundreds of them. The commission has it. So when the commission gets the mock ballot, the commission just inform these different groups, and then they come over and receive the mock ballots, and we send copies of the mock ballots to the magisterial offices across the country so that they distribute to the interest groups as well. But don't just distribute like that. Based on the database that we have of the civil society organizations across the country, we distribute it per magisterial area. That's how we call it, magisterial area. So they make the mock ballot available to them. So it's not just the candidates, but we send it to political parties. We give it to independent candidates. We give it to the interest groups. They all go across. We even give it to the churches. We give it to them to go and teach their people how to mark the ballot. But I mean, the efficiency depends on the availability of the ballot. The timing is very, very important.
On this question, and Mr. Kunney can take the question from Martin on what EULA can do next. But Ernest was talking about the Supreme Court.
Ernest was right. Ernest was right about the Elections Commission.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court did not put a prohibition, right? The Supreme Court did not stop anybody from moving ahead.
The Supreme Court provided that the Elections Commission should not proceed with just the 3 propositions. It must not condense the propositions. And given the 5 days in question, it was just impossible for the Elections Commission to go back and reconsider the 5 articles and be able to design symbols and text for those. So I think it was just fair enough for the Elections Commission to come up and tell the public that based on the ruling of the Supreme Court, even though it is optional, we have the option.
Exactly.
But realistically, 5 days to the election, we are not able to design the symbols and the text for the other 5 articles to sufficiently put the information to the Liberian people. Mind you, there are 2 violations that are on our scope. And anyone want to file lawsuit following the referendum results, they will be right to file those lawsuits. Article 92 provides that if the propositions are more than 1, each of them should stand on their own in the referendum for the Liberian people to vote for. Number 2, in that particular article provides that the government should be able to disseminate the information of the referendum through the information services. Information services in that respect means that the organ of the government that is responsible for informing the public, the Ministry of Information, for example, should be able to put a mechanism in place to disseminate information effectively on the referendum. And that's the official gazette that they should use as the basis,
thank you, Joekai.
Which was not done. So anybody can file lawsuit following the referendum.
And to add to why I'm saying it should be done 1 year prior to the referendum.
The action should be taken 1 year. I mean, the referendum should be held 1 year following the action of the legislature. Right. It provides.
And you see, that was the Supreme Court's problem, right? Because Supreme Court ruling, we expect them to say, black and white, but it's like, okay, this is wrong, but you have the option to do it or not do it. I think that was very fair.
So they left that.
On the EULA question, we have 2 last callers to bring in. But on what EULA's next step will be, Mr. Kunney, you can take that. We don't want to beat on you, but you are EULA former president and former board chair. And also you run the election.
And ambassador too.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud I'm very, very much proud of my affiliation with the union. But to answer the brother, to address the brother's concern, first of all, I want to stipulate that the effort by EULA and its partners did not involve restriction. EULA did not advocate for restrictions on its call for dual citizenship. I want to make that point very clear. The brother, just like myself, is opposed to some of the restrictions. Some of them are very ridiculous. We are opposed to that. But the position we take is that in the advocacy process, you may not be able to get everything that you want at your first trial. So we took the position that in as much as there were some restrictions that we disagree with, it is preferable to take the proposition as it is given, with the hope that in the future we will continue to make progress.
Okay.
That is the position of EULA.
So what are your next steps?
I'm coming now. That's the position of EULA. You see, in the advocacy and in the legislative process, EULA did not have a 100% say so. EULA was negotiating with politicians that represent various sectors of the Liberian society. And each of those representatives and senators had to also listen to their constituency. That is the process. So EULA was not the only constituency at the table. So we accepted the restrictions. First, we believe that the restriction addresses 98% of the concerns of Liberians in the diaspora. The exclusions we're talking about apply to about 2-3% of Liberians that want to be politically active in their country, that want to be ministers, that want to be senators, that want to be representatives, that want to be all of these political positions. and we recognize that interest. So, with regard to the question, what do you do if the referendum fails or if it passes? The answer would be we will continue to do what we've been doing. If the referendum fails, we will still advocate. If the referendum passes with a restriction, we will still advocate for the reductions of the restrictions.
Thank you.
So what the message I got from my brothers and my sisters that are against the proposition is that no matter what you do, we're going to advocate. Even if you say we should leave it at the table, what are you going to do? You're not going to decree it. You will still advocate. You will still petition. So what is wrong with putting something in your pocket and continue the petitioning? They're not taking anything at all and say you will still do the petitioning. So the short answer is, if the referendum passes, we will advocate for the reduction of the restrictions. If it fails, we will still advocate. We will do the same thing that we've been doing until we learn to where we want to be.
Thank you. Let me take my last caller. My other caller dropped off. He was calling from international number, Mr. Kunney. Because you couldn't.
He answered the question, but he want to beat it and beat it. They've been beating that thing here. They can't get it right.
Because I'm an old teacher. I'm an old teacher.
Let me,
I keep telling you I'm a teacher.
Mr. Zeze Goya is back. He's not satisfied with the answer you gave. Mr. Goya, 1 minute, please.
Yes, sir. So, yes, sir. So, Mr. George, Mr. Ja and President Kunney, I think the both of you missed almost to the point I was making.
Okay.
My point was not that diaspora Liberians have not done anything. I said that we are proffering prescriptions that we ourselves did not follow. That when ULA sent election monitors and they came back for 2017, they made report. And within those reports were serious issues about voter registration. Now, we knew that in-house as ULA. How come if we are going to be backing an issue-related stuff on the ballot, which as Joekai said, has no pictures, right? We're talking about a referendum. How come we did not take our own prescription in-house that we have seen on the ground to make sure that we do enough voter registration? The things I'm talking about here, look, sometimes we tend to support our own clubs, so let me make this very open. I am still the current Assistant Secretary General for ULA for Press and Propaganda. I was the first person to host a fundraiser for dual citizenship in Minnesota. Yes, I withdrew from the dual citizenship proposal because whatever was the final thing that ended up on the ballot was not what I backed. And so we should come back here and pretend like there are some people who just don't like ULA. My point I'm making here is that we diaspora Liberians, yes, I saw George Lobo on the ground. He was doing something. What I am saying is that we have these prescriptions. We are very good at coming up with prescriptions, but very, 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 very lacking in taking our own prescriptions. This is not about supporting our clubs, because I still belong to ULA. I am still Assistant Secretary General for the current administration. And I'm telling you that I withdrew for the dual citizenship proposition backing because of the way it ended up.
Thank you. That's clear enough.
I need to come in here to, I don't know if it is support to Kunney's position on this. Look, this is what we can do, and I've always believed in. The Constitution has problems, and one of the problems is the dual citizen issue, which is fair enough. But equally so, that is not the only serious issues that we have with the Constitution. 1820, we had Constitution. 27 years later, 1847, we amended. 1986, we amended. Why can we plan correctly and draft a new Constitution? Dual citizenship will be there as a provision in the Constitution.
Mr. Joekai, let me stop you.
Yes.
1986, we did not amend. We threw away the old Constitution.
1986, we adopted a new Constitution. That's it. We adopted a new Constitution. Yeah. Sorry about that. We adopted a new Constitution and it drafted. And I always like to provide a clarification. The final product was not an Amos Sawyer commission thing. Look, it was the 49-member advisory council. Kunney should be able to talk about that. Those are the people who changed the draft that was produced by the Amos Sawyer Committee significantly. The 49-member advisory committee set up by Doe that produced the final draft. I think Kunney knows most about that. Put them in Banga, put sufficient food and money to them, and every time Bagbala then went there and say, put Article 52C. Anybody who want to run for president must be in the country for 10 years. They removed. They put that in the Amos Sawyer draft. The issue that Amos Sawyer talk about paramilitary and military people not taking part in election to bar people from taking part in election. They took that one from there. That's what they were doing until they turned the Constitution into what it is that we have today. Why don't we have a draft Constitution that will include the dual citizenship significantly in a way that everyone will be satisfied? Maybe only president and vice president that anybody with dual citizenship cannot, contest, but rest of position they should have the right to have. Why not we have a new constitution, a brand new constitution that we always have a significant role into play? That's what we should do. And just put one question to the Liberian people: accept or don't accept the Constitution. That is better than having so many propositions that will confuse them. And we can have better laws in our new Constitution to improve governance in our country. That's what we should concentrate on. And
Mr. Joekai, the CRC did bulk of that work.
And I can tell you more about that.
Yeah.
We already have it. And that work was done by the CRC. They came to the United States. A total of 73 consultations were held in the US, in Ghana, and in Liberia, across Liberia. They produced 352,000 issues from those consultations from the 1986 Constitution, telling you the magnitude of the problems that are associated with the Constitution that are also affecting governance. And out of the 352,000 plus issues that they derived from those consultations from Liberians in the diaspora and in Liberia, they were able to condense them into 25 propositions, the CRC, and submitted that after the voter upon it, cross-section of citizens in Banga, and submitted to the legislature. It is from those 25 propositions that they reduced significantly to 8 that was passed by a resolution of the legislature for this gone referendum. It tells you that we have significant issue. We have serious issue with the Constitution. 25 propositions. You should just change the Constitution. You should draft the Constitution. And I hope people like Mr. Kunney, who is now an ambassador, who are with EULA and experience, they should be on this kind of advocacy in the U.S. So all of us come together in the U.S., we support it and make a proposal to the government. If the propositions don't get the required two-thirds votes this referendum, that should be a strong advocacy for EULA and Liberians on the ground, so that we can be able to have an opportunity to adapt a new constitution that will make our laws better. And that will
Mr. Kunney agrees with you. Mr. Kunney and the rest want to keep nibbling at the edges.
No.
I think, Mr. Kunney, you need to work with a grassroots alternative movement.
No. Dennis, do not put words in my mouth.
Okay, no, I did that to provoke you. Go ahead.
Man, giving you that boy, you crying.
Listen, I'm in total agreement with my brother Josiah. I mean, he has said some of the most important things that any guest on this show can say. Thank you, my brother, for absorbing Dr. Amos Sawyer from the madness that we have, attributing that madness to him as him being the author. Thank you. You're one of the few Liberians that know the history of Liberia. Yeah. That document we call our Constitution is not a Sawyer Constitution.
No.
And the sad thing is, there are many Liberians that know the fight, but because they want to reverse history, they continue to tell the wrong things to our people. So thank you for that acknowledgement. And then I don't put worry in my mouth. I'm not against drafting a new constitution. That is all part of the advocacy. And this is why I say, whatever result we have, we will re-collaborate and sit down and see what will go forward. Right. That's what I'm saying. It's just
Mr. Kunney, that's not what you're saying. Here's what you're saying. Because what a lot of people, even in the diaspora, disagree with is that there should be no restriction. You are saying, okay, let's take the little they give us, and then we'll work more to remove or to reduce those restrictions. Joekai is saying, throw the whole thing away, let's write the Constitution from scratch. That's what I was referring to when I was putting those words in your mouth.
All of that can be achieved. We can achieve the reduction of the restriction by writing a new constitution. We can achieve the reduction of the restriction by advocating more to reduce it in another referendum.
All right.
Dennis,
Yeah.
Let's read comments. We have a lot of people commenting. Let's read those comments. Then we take the parting comments from our panelists yet. We've gone 2 hours already. We can go
I'm going to stay looking for better ball for me on the show.
Jackie Saya said Kenya and South Africa constitutions are two of the best constitutions in the world. They have socio-economic rights that were not in older constitution. We should not copy the US. That is the problem. Context matters. Whenever grants, let me be able to vote on my land, then I will use my voting power to change things again. It is not written in stone. Sam Wallow, the country needs cleaner and more ethical people in order to progress. In the state of Arizona, in 46,000 of the more than 2.3 million ballots cast in 2012 were rejected. That was 2% invalid vote or invalidation rate. There was no uproar about voter education. Folks need to stop the false narrative and focus on the real issues in Liberian elections processes, which is the quality of candidates being clear to run for public office. There needs to be integrity and put in place to vet and weed out unethical candidates and those engaged in impropriety. I don't agree with that second point about unethical candidates. But let's read a little more comments here.
Let me read that one. Then is Fala Jacobs, right? I agree with Jackie. Both of us are listening as well. Absa, in South Africa, they have pocket constitution. People travel with it in their pocket. Liberians are not used to their constitution. They do not know what is in their constitution. I think we have some of those constitutions or written. I had a copy before, but I have a bigger one now that I like also. Sam Wallow also is saying, yeah, Dennis, we are seeing a huge part of the problem right now. We have a guest who in past government, I think he wants to write here, who a past government of Liberia invested in training to build the country's capacity on election, but he's not there adding value. Can he say why? Joekai, that is a shot against you. And Jackie writes, yeah, we would like to know if the government has a budget for civic education. Then the thing is, you say we might not leave from here today.
I leave a better boy now for me, for my brother Josiah.
Josiah, they say the government pay money for you and you're in Connecticut.
The government train you in Connecticut, you eating hamburger. Why are you here?
Yes, I agree. I have some trainings, some short-term trainings in different places, and I extended my experience, my knowledge in election management because I work for the commission. I agree, but in 2015, I left the commission to run for a seat in the legislature. I could not be an employee of the Elections Commission and be a candidate at the same time. And so when I didn't win the seat, but gained significant experience from the process. And I think I made a good impression on the people based on what I did. So I appreciate that. So I couldn't go back to the Elections Commission, but I also found myself in another agency of government, the National Commission on Small Arms, where I was able to help institute the first firearms and ammunition Control Act, guns management law in Liberia for the first time. Kunney knows that Liberia only operated on executive orders as far as arms management was concerned. I'm making reference to him because he's one of the experienced person in law enforcement. The government relied on executive orders. So during my time at the Small Arms Commission, we instituted the first guns law of Liberia. Now Liberia has arms management regime in place, and we were able to ratify many of the international conventions on arm management. And I also serve as the physical security and stockpile management focal point for Liberia because I was trained in Germany, in Galakachi specifically, and led the submission of Liberia 2-year support to the United Nations, report rather to the United Nations on arms management in Liberia. So it's true, Liberia trained me in several capacities, but we had a political change in our country, and so I have never been told to serve. Once I'm told to serve, I'm always ready to serve my country, to contribute. Irrespective of that, I always use the social media platform to share some of the knowledge and experience that I have, like we are doing here today, Kunney and I, we are not paid for this, though, but we owe it to our country. And so we have that debt of gratitude to pay to our country. All the time we are called to serve. So I'm willing to serve anytime.
Thank you.
People were calling me and say, if George, we appoint you to come to the commission at that or reconstituting the commission. I got so many messages. Will you come with all the political things that you have? We joke about it, we laugh about it. But I was a candidate one time in the election. That was a political time, but it has nothing to do with my professionalism as far as managing election and security sector management is concerned in the country. Anytime I'm ready to serve, no matter who's president.
Right. And we are, and if you still have my dream job as a principal of Sino High or superintendent of Sino County, I'm ready to go today.
It's on my list. It's the vault. I'm keeping it in the vault. I'll never forget about that.
There's a comment here from Agatha Shelley. I do agree with the dual citizenship proposition because we from abroad should go as private citizens and be a consultant to the government. This also creates jobs, not only to go after a job back home. Jackie, there's superintendent of Sino County. My dream job is a government job. And if I'm offered that job today, I'll be on my way. There's nothing wrong with that.
But your job not in the exclusion.
No, it's not there. It's not in there. So I can be citizen.
Anthony, we're doing all the questions?
Yeah, Joe, there are a lot, but we've gone 2 hours. Joe, let's do this. Can we commit to another section of this? I mean, I learned a lot, and I think those who follow into learn a lot. It was very informative, and you can only get it right here with this kind of panelists on Focus on Liberia. But yet, what? Where are Liberians? Where are Liberians? If we were yelling on top of our heads, calling people names, how they look, they will all be here. It speaks to who we are. We have a long way to go, but we can't give up. We got to continue. The education, that's what Focus of Liberia is all about. We educate, we elevate, we promote all things Liberia. That is the way to go. You can't go wrong with that. Gentlemen, we can't thank you enough. We will take your closing comments so that we can close the broadcast. I see that Mr. Kunney is more than ready to run away from here. He got a woman from Joekai. I don't know why he's rushing. Mr. Kunney, your parting comment.
I've done it. He lives giving me a bill about tonight, so he's looking for all kinds of ways to get to me. But having said that, you guys, it's always a pleasure being on this platform. You do a great job on behalf of Liberia. We always have to find the time, to come together to discuss the issues of our country, no matter our persuasion, because Liberia is the only country that we have. And coming on this platform, exchanging views with other Liberians, that have critical information, sharing it to us, sharing it to the general public, I think is one of the most essential public service that FOL has been doing. And I'm very much proud to be part of this process. I'm always available. The 3 hats I wear. I got my social worker hat. I got my law enforcement hat. I got my political commentary hat. So anytime, I'm always available. And Josiah, thank you very much. You brought a lot of information to the show, and that is completely educational. And I hope, like Asoni said, we will find time to continue these discussions. Elections is very much important to our country. Today, many Liberians are wondering, what will Liberia be? Are we taking the 1985 elections very seriously? If the 1985 election has gone according to plan, where will our country be?
Yeah.
So it is from that point that I take elections in Liberia seriously. It doesn't matter if my candidate wins or if my candidate, is not successful. The important thing is Liberians have now the opportunity to elect their own leaders. We are making progress. There will be challenges, but I think my country deserves a big pat on the back. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kunney said, and really, let me acknowledge that I really enjoy sharing the platform with Mr. Kunney, and I look forward to a conversation of this nature anytime in the near future. It's very educative, informative for our people. We should not stop it. Let's keep doing it. Let me say also that we have a culture in Liberia that is very bad, and I'm sure Mr. Kunney observed it during the their days before us. When it is not a Ghanaian being introduced as an expert or a Nigerian introduced as an expert, they won't listen to you much if you are Liberian. If they say this is a Liberian security expert or a Liberian election expert, I was with Josiah yesterday, I knew him what he know about election or X, Y, Z. Yeah, we don't tend to respect our own, and people respect us outside. We go there, we help, we manage their processes, we save their democracy, we ensure that it's protected. We'll come back home, we do what we're supposed to do. We have to keep listening to each other, and we have to keep doing this so that there's a time that we all can appreciate the result of our efforts. I heard Liberians thinking we want Delon, we don't want money. I thought that was, yes, they were thinking about Delon, but I try to move that away from Delon in the way of applying it to the mindset of the Liberian voter in terms of how it's changing. Because if you compare that to the period from 1987 all the way to 2020, the slogans, the major slogans of the elections you heard have been terrible, have been very, very discomforting. Like you say, you kill my mom, you kill my pa, we vote for you. Not in any different society, you won't hear anything like that. You know book, you don't know book, we will vote for you. And they're changing it around. So I'm not tying it to the candidate. I'm like trying to measure the transition that is taking place with the mindset of the Liberian voter.
That's the progress.
Yeah, and if I'm not saying that this is guaranteed, but I think it's an opportunity for us to move in quickly and nurture it so that we can have a better voters in Liberia. Because when you have bad set of voters, obviously you will have bad set of leaders. Bad voters will always vote bad leaders. Good voters will always vote good leaders. So this is about the mindset of the voter, and this is an opportunity for us to nurture it. And the way we can make our contribution is by making use of platforms like this. Come here, talk about it, encourage the Liberian voter, encourage those who support the process, the government, and encourage those who manage the process. I want to say thanks to everybody. Let's remain positive, and let's watch out for the results for the referendum, and we all can have our take on it and have a discussion on the way forward. But for now, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity, and you're welcome anytime. I'm ready to be invited. To be here.
Thank you. And on that note, we have a book that I helped to author. It's called The Republic of Liberia, Foundational Words of Our Nation. This little book contains all the foundational documents of the country. And I like what it says here. It has the Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem, the Constitution, of course, the Declaration of Independence. So all of these foundational documents in one book. And what it says here is for us to have the democracies are sustained by citizens who have the requisite knowledge, skills, and the disposition. So the only way we get this is through sustained civic education. If that is not there, to Jokai's point, if we have citizens that are not knowledgeable and they're going to be singing the song, even if I die, my spirit will vote for you, we're going to have a problem. And so bad voters without the requisite knowledge and skills produce bad leaders or bad candidates. And what we end up with is a bad country that is 200 years backward. So keep it set here at Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. All the noise and the entertainment, they are just for a season. But the kind of information and the knowledge and education you get on Focus on Liberia will last you for a lifetime. I'm proud to be a part of this organization. Mr. Sonny, let's end the broadcast. Thank you.
So, folks, we can't thank you enough for being with us here. I have something to share with you. A friend of mine wrote this on the 18th of October. I'm not going to tell you the year for some reason. It is very brief. And he titled it, The Good Old Days. He writes, the days we had, never appreciated, thinking they were the worst, hoping for the better days ahead. Then when better days arrive, we found them not good enough and long for the good old days. Think about it. And I also have another thing for you. It's a song. And it's called We Are All Liberians. Whether your candidate made it or not, you are a Liberian. whether the dual citizenship thing will pass or not, whether Kunney will be smiling, whether he will have to go back to the drawing board and remove those restrictions that I don't want, you are still Liberian. On that note, enjoy that song. Thank you, Joekai, my friend. Kunney, the chief political analyst of Focus on Liberia. You try to hide that identity, I disclose it. Bye-bye, folks.
Peace.
Liberia is our home. Liberia people, Liberia, all we want. Liberia, Liberia, all we want. Liberia, Liberia.